He's here now. He's the Health Minister, Andy Burnham. Welcome back to the Daily Politics.
Thank you, Andrew.
Are you going to stand up for the patient against this blatant power grab by a producer interest?
Well, I'm not here to speak for the BMA, of course, but
well, I understand that.
I think
done that.
The principal things that the public would look to health ministers, to Patricia Hewitt, to myself and others in the department, well, two things really, I think. Yes, we have got to ensure that the NHS overall lives within its means. It would be deeply irresponsible if we were to allow overspending to continue, storing up problems for the NHS in the future. The second thing we've got to do is to do everything we can to improve the patient experience.
So why are they so angry? Why are they so angry?
The recent data says 9 out of 10 patients are
No, why are they,
happy.
I understand that. I've asked you to stand up for the patient. You've decided to move on to something else. So let me ask you, why are the producer interests? Why are the doctors, whose salaries you've increased by how much in 10 years?
There's been a considerable
Much?
increase. I don't have the...
I'll tell you, 130%. 130%. How much have you increased nurses' pay by?
Well, it differs, doesn't it, according to the grade on which
38%. Nurses 38, doctors 130%. Now, let me ask you again. Given that you've basically stuffed gold bars in their mouth, why are they so angry?
Well, we've had a 10-year programme where we have challenged the NHS, where we have pushed the NHS, where we have asked a lot of those people who, yes, Andrew, we are paying more. But when we came to power, you will remember there was a real crisis in general practice in this country. Inner city practices just simply could not get the doctors.
So you've paid more, you've paid 130%. Why are they so angry?
I'll accept that the reform programme has challenged a lot of people. It's put pressure on people. We have asked a lot of people. But the results are there for patients because tomorrow, the waiting list figures, contrary to today's reports, we will produce an outstanding set of waiting list figures tomorrow, which show that the NHS is halfway towards achieving a goal that many have said was simply unachievable, i.e. the 18-week target from GP referral.
All right, I'm going to come back to doctors in a minute, but you raised waiting lists. Will the government still achieve by the end of next year its target of no one having to wait more than 18 weeks? Will that be achieved?
If I can be confident of anything, I am most confident about that. In my job, I'm looking constantly at that issue because, as I say, that is what matters to patients. That is important to patients. So
why did this email go out from the NHS warning your communications officers that they've got a real problem on this score?
I really don't know, to be honest. I really don't know
why. It came from your department.
I mean, to be honest,
it came from your department.
I am preparing to say tomorrow, we're laying for the first time before the public. This is actually quite an important psychological step for the NHS because for the very first time it gives figures on the whole patient journey. It doesn't have one bit of the journey, such as your first outpatient's appointment or the inpatient waiting list. This is the whole end-to-end experience. So for the NHS, this is a big moment because it shines a light on the whole journey. And what the figures will show, I didn't want to release them today, but now they're in the public domain, is that 48% of patients are already being treated within the 18...
So you're going to get to 100% by the end of next year?
Yeah, we've got 18 months to go to deliver this target. And, Andrew, the NHS this year, it balanced last year. It has £8 billion more this year, the single biggest ever increase for the NHS. There are costed plans in all parts of the country to deliver that 18-week target. Now, that, to me, is not a National Health Service sneeze. Okay, well, that is an improving National Health Service.
You go back to your department and find out why your own department is putting out an email saying to your own people within the NHS that some patients will have to wait in excess of a year.
Well, at present, there are...
Have you seen this email?
There are still some people waiting unacceptably.
No, but have you seen this email?
I have seen that email.
So who wrote it?
It was issued by a strategic health authority. I don't know why people issue every email that they do, and it's not the job of a minister to say...
All right.
To check every email that's sent out by the department.
All right. Thank you for doing that on the waiting list. Let's go back, though, to our doctor, who's still waiting on the green. What do you say to him?
Well, what I say is that we recognise that the reform programme may have been challenging, may have been difficult in part, and in part may have been disempowering. I would defend to the hilt the introduction of national targets back in 1997-98. because there was a lot of money about to enter the system, and that money had to produce specific results for the public. So I would defend that to the hilt, and I would say they were right for the time. But I do listen very carefully to not just doctors but nurses. I did a whole series of work shadowing last year where I do listen extremely carefully, and I recognise that the next era, the era of the top-down target, can and should come to an end.
Let's go back to our doctor on the green. Given that the Minister says he does listen, given that they have spent more on the health service than any government on history, why does the BMA still have to get involved in megaphone diplomacy, using exaggerated and hyperbole? Why don't you just have a quiet discussion behind closed doors?
I don't think we exaggerate or speak hyperbolically. I like to be challenged. I think the Minister is right to challenge us to raise our game. I mentioned that earlier, and I'm really proud of the way in which we've achieved the waiting list reductions. Every one of those patients that had been treated has been treated by a doctor, by nurses, by other healthcare workers, none of them, of course, by managers or politicians. The problem is that when we come to go back to our hospital, what will I find when I go back? I will find various plans for my department to have its budget cut by 5% next year. Pay increases, perhaps. Investment increases, perhaps. When I go back tomorrow, the budget will be cut by 5%. Actually, we don't have enough managers. We can barely organise ourselves. We're doing so much work. We have to cut our budget and at the same time increase our capacity in order to achieve the waiting list target. I want to achieve that waiting list target, that 18-week target for next year. I desperately want to, and so does everybody I work with. But we're told that at the time of doing that, we have to cut our budgets. And that's a health service that is disjointed and not listening to the profession. And if we have to engage in megaphones, that's why.
Well, you didn't need a megaphone to speak to the Minister today. We thank you for joining us in the Daily Politics. Alan Duncan, you can maybe have a chuckle at this, being in opposition, but I put it to you that whoever is in power now just gets duffed up by the doctors.
I don't think so. No, I don't chuckle.
Your government did.
I don't chuckle about this. I find it deeply depressing. I mean, I admit this government, over 10 years, has pretty well doubled the money for the NHS. And yet at the end of that...
That's perceptive.
Yeah, well, it's honest. And yet what we've got is a ministerial team pretty well at war with people who work in the NHS. We've got doctors who loathe the ministers, and ministers who are very, very unhappy with people who work in the NHS.
Quick word from Gwyneth.
The doctors are better now.
You just heard it.
Well, that's a quick word from Gwyneth.
The doctors do actually need to take a deep breath and take 1 or 2 steps back, both in general practice and in consultants. They cannot expect to go on receiving the benefits that they are and not delivering the goods. And if they don't seriously calm down and think about what they're doing, they will damage the future of the National Health Service.
Right. On these final words from Gwyneth, we're all stunned into silence, and we'll therefore leave it there. Andy Dunn, thanks for being back on the programme. Now, anyone still trying to work out what that 20... Now he's the health minister.